Noah Vance was late again, and this time, he didn't have a sitter. He swerved into the community center parking lot with one hand on the steering wheel and his 6-year-old daughter's mismatched backpack dangling from his teeth. Olive, shoes! Now. We've got 5 minutes to pretend I've got my life together. Olive giggled from the back seat as she pulled on her glittery sneakers. We don't have time for toast? No toast. No time. Just damage control. He yanked open her door, scooped her up, and jogged toward the front entrance of the daycare. His sneakers squeaked on the linoleum as he skidded to a stop at the sign-in desk. Mr. Vance again? The receptionist said with a tight smile. Yeah, I know. I swear, next week I'll be organized enough to be a real adult. She tilted her head. It's Thursday. He handed Olive her lunchbox. Be good, okay? Daddy's got a job interview. Olive grinned. I'll tell them you're gonna be rich. Noah kissed her forehead and bolted back to his car. He had 20 minutes to get downtown for a job he wasn't even sure he applied for. The night before, he'd been up until 2, editing resumes for every kind of job imaginable: warehouse, office assistant, barista, and in the haze, he'd accidentally attached the wrong file to one application, a resume he'd made as a joke, pretending to be a corporate consultant with overseas experience and a 6-figure salary history. He didn't realize until that morning when he got the call. Mr. Vance, we'd love to meet you. You come highly recommended. He hadn't recommended himself to anyone. But he needed the money. Bad. With the rent overdue and Olive's school fees stacking up, he couldn't afford to say no. So he'd thrown on his best thrift store blazer and hoped for the best. The building was ridiculous: glass walls, a waterfall in the lobby, and a receptionist who looked like she belonged in a beauty magazine. Mr. Vance? She asked. He cleared his throat. That's me. Please take the elevator to the top floor. Ms. Olivia Fairchild will see you there. He blinked. Ms. who? Fairchild. She's the CEO. Oh. He stepped into the elevator, heart pounding. That name sounded familiar. He pulled out his phone to Google but stopped himself. He didn't want to look like he had no clue who he was meeting. The doors opened into a sleek office with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the entire city. And standing in front of a massive marble desk was a woman in a dark red blouse and tailored black slacks, her arms crossed delicately. She looked like she didn't have time to waste. Her eyes moved over him slowly, curiously, like she was trying to figure him out. He swallowed. Ms. Fairchild? Yes. Noah Vance. Her voice was smooth, but there was something sharp underneath it, like she was used to people lying to her. He offered a hand. Nice to meet you. She didn't shake it. Instead, she walked behind her desk, sat down, and opened a folder. This resume says you managed a multi-million-dollar portfolio in Singapore. He sat down slowly. Right. So. About that. She raised an eyebrow. I sent the wrong resume. I know how that sounds, but I swear, I was applying to different types of jobs last night, and you sent a fake resume to a billion-dollar company. I didn't mean to. I was desperate. She stared at him for a long moment. Tell me the truth. What do you actually do? I fix things. I used to do maintenance at a hotel before they downsized. Right now I do odd jobs, deliveries, whatever pays. I have a daughter. She's 6. And I messed up. There was a silence so thick it made his ears ring. Then she stood up. Follow me. What? Olivia was already walking. I said follow me. Noah trailed her down the hallway to a separate wing of the office. She opened a door to a sleek room filled with boxes and scattered papers. This department's a mess. It's logistics. I need someone to organize, file, communicate with vendors, and make sure deliveries don't get stuck in customs. Everyone I've hired either quits or flakes. You're offering me the job? I'm offering you a chance to prove you're not completely full of it. Noah blinked. That's kind of generous. You seem like someone who won't steal from me. That's rare. He followed her back to her office, stunned. She handed him a thin badge with his name already printed on it. You start tomorrow. 7 a.m. Don't be late. The interview lasted 12 minutes. He walked out of the building in a daze. He picked Olive up from daycare, still in shock. Did you get it? She asked, skipping beside him. I think I did. She grinned. Told you you'd be rich. He laughed, but his heart was pounding for a different reason now. There was something about Olivia Fairchild, something unreadable. Her presence filled the room. The way she looked at him, like she could see right through him. It rattled him. And part of him liked it. The next morning, he was there at 6:30, coffee in hand. Olivia passed by at exactly 7, glanced at him, and said nothing. But he caught the faintest curve in her lips before she disappeared into her office. Days rolled into weeks. Noah learned fast. He cleaned up the mess in logistics, got shipments in order, and made the warehouse staff laugh. He even fixed a busted scanner with duct tape and an old phone charger. But what threw him off the most was Olivia. She wasn't what he expected from a billionaire boss. She was sharp, yes, but she had a dry sense of humor, and sometimes when she thought no one was looking, she'd stop by the break room and make her own coffee even though there were assistants who would do it for her. One afternoon, she called him into her office. He walked in, expecting another task. Instead, she pointed at the chair across from her. Sit. He sat. She looked at him, really looked at him. You're different. Thanks? You didn't ask how much the job pays. You didn't ask for anything. I needed a job. The rest didn't matter. She tilted her head. You have a daughter. Her name's Olive. She likes glitter pancakes and pretending to be a vet. She sounds like a handful. She's everything. Olivia was quiet for a moment. You're not like the people I usually hire. I'll take that as a compliment. You should. And for the first time, she smiled. It wasn't forced. It wasn't polite. It was real. And it did something to his chest he couldn't explain. He left her office with his pulse racing and a strange warmth in his stomach. That night, Olive sat on his lap eating cereal, and he stared out the window of their tiny apartment, thinking about a woman with dark eyes and too many walls. He didn't realize it yet, but something had already started. And neither of them were ready for what came next. The first time Olivia saw Noah without the warehouse grime on his shirt was at an emergency vendor meeting she hadn't planned to attend until she heard he'd somehow convinced 3 suppliers to drop their rates in exchange for faster turnaround times. That level of negotiation from someone with no formal background was unusual, irrationally intriguing. He was at the head of the conference table, sleeves rolled up, a pen tucked behind one ear, and speaking in a tone that was calm but assertive. If we can cut the customs delay by even 1 day, you're moving product faster. Everyone wins. I'm not asking for miracles, just working clocks. When he looked up and saw her enter, he didn't flinch. He didn't stumble over his words or suddenly become awkward. He just pulled out the chair next to him and gestured for her to sit. Glad you could make it, Ms. Fairchild. We're just finishing up. She sat, folding one leg over the other. Don't let me interrupt. After the meeting, as the room emptied, she stayed behind. You didn't mention logistics was your secret weapon, she said, collecting the scattered folders into a stack. I didn't know it was, he replied. Turns out desperation teaches you how to talk fast and listen faster. She raised an eyebrow. You're not wrong. He leaned against the edge of the table, arms crossed. You came in here to ask something. What is it? I'm taking the company jet to Boston for a weekend summit, she said. Our shipping contact is hosting a private networking dinner. You've done more for that department in 3 weeks than my last manager did in a year. You want me to come? I want you to represent us. I don't have a suit that costs more than a grocery bill. You will buy tomorrow. Before he could argue, she was already walking out, her heels echoing across the marble floor. The next day, a tailor showed up at his apartment. Olive was at school, and he was still brushing toothpaste off his collar when the man arrived with 2 garment bags and a tape measure. No one ever sent tailors to his door before. By the time the jet lifted off the runway, Noah sat across from Olivia in a navy suit that fit like it had been built around his shoulders. The cabin was quiet, except for the low hum of engines and the occasional rustle of a newspaper she skimmed through without really reading. "You don't like flying?" he asked. "I don't like being stuck. Something tells me you're never stuck for long." She glanced at him, eyes unreadable. "You'd be surprised." Boston was a blur of luxury Noah had never touched before: black cars with tinted windows, a suite with a skyline view, and a dinner that felt more like a royal negotiation than anything else. At the event, Olivia introduced him simply as Noah Vance, my logistics lead, and left him to navigate a room full of people who wore cufflinks as casually as socks. He didn't flinch. He listened, asked the right questions, and by the time dessert was served, he'd secured a faster customs lane and convinced a notoriously rigid vendor to trial a pilot program. Back in the suite, Noah removed his tie with a sigh and dropped onto the armchair. Olivia stood by the window, looking out at the lights. "How did you learn to do that?" she asked quietly. "Do what?" "Read people. Like you've got a map of them already memorized." He shrugged. "When you've been the guy nobody listens to, you learn to watch. People say a lot when they think no one's listening." She turned toward him. "And what do you think I'm not saying? You run everything like you're waiting for it to fall apart." She blinked. "I'm not judging. Just saying." It must be exhausting. He expected her to shut down or change the subject. But her voice dropped instead, softer, slower. "My father built this company with his bare hands. He was 20 when he started, and by the time he died, the board was already circling like vultures." Noah leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I was 23. She continued. "Grieving, terrified, and suddenly the youngest CEO in our industry. They all bet I would fail." He didn't speak. Just listened. "I haven't taken a vacation in 6 years. Every move I make is calculated. Every mistake costs millions. I don't get to relax. I don't get to miss a step. You think I'm waiting for it to fall apart? I'm holding it together with everything I have." He stood slowly, walked over to her, and took the empty glass from her hand, placing it on the table. "You're not alone in it anymore." She met his eyes, something unreadable flickering there. The next morning, the jet took them home before sunrise. Olive was waiting outside the school when he arrived to pick her up, her backpack bouncing as she ran toward him. "I made you a card," she shouted, holding up a folded sheet covered in marker hearts and a drawing of a stick figure in a suit. "You look fancy." He lifted her up and kissed her cheek. "You have no idea." That afternoon, Olivia called him into her office. She didn't look up from her screen as she spoke. "There's a charity gala next week. The board expects me to attend with a guest." He hesitated. "Are you asking me?" "I'm telling you. You'll be there. 7 sharp. Wear black. I'll handle the rest." He opened his mouth to respond, but she'd already turned her chair away, dismissing him without a glance. That night he stood by the stove, flipping pancakes for dinner, Olive chatting about her day. But his mind replayed the last thing Olivia had said. Not a request. A command. And yet something about it felt like an invitation. He didn't know what to expect from the gala. But he had a feeling it was going to change everything. Noah stood in front of the full-length mirror, fidgeting with the cuffs of the crisp black tuxedo that had arrived the night before, hand-delivered with a card that simply read, 7. Don't be late. Olivia's handwriting was unmistakable, sharp, angled, and impatient even on paper. "Why do you look like a penguin?" Olive asked, peeking up from the coloring books spread across their kitchen table. "Because I have to go to a very fancy party tonight." "Are there going to be princesses?" "Sort of." "Are you dancing with one?" He paused, then smiled faintly. Maybe. He dropped Olive off at his neighbor's, a retired nurse who adored her and had agreed to babysit for the evening. Then he hailed the black car already waiting outside, the driver nodding silently before pulling into traffic. The Fairchild Foundation Gala was held at the Langley Grand, a historic hotel known for its gold-leaf ceilings and crystal chandeliers the size of cars. The entire building shimmered with candlelight and opulence, and as Noah stepped out of the car, he had the surreal feeling of walking into someone else's life. Then he saw her. Olivia descended the marble staircase like a vision carved in motion. Her gown was a cascade of midnight silk that followed her like smoke, her hair swept into a polished knot at the nape of her neck. Her earrings caught the light as she moved, but it was her expression calm, unreadable, and quietly powerful that made everything else fade. "You clean up," she said, her eyes grazing over him without pause. "Better than expected." "Careful," he replied. "You're dangerously close to a compliment. I'm not known for those." "I figured." She didn't offer her arm. She didn't need to. He followed her through the crowd like gravity. Inside the ballroom, the guest list read like a who's who of power and money: ambassadors, CEOs, legacy heirs, and art collectors. Olivia floated through them with ease, every nod and handshake precise. But when she introduced Noah, there was a subtle shift. "This is Noah Vance," she said once, to a man who clearly controlled a shipping empire. "He doesn't bluff." Another time, to a woman who ran a high-end logistics firm. "He's the reason we stopped losing money to port delays." Each time, she didn't just introduce him, she named his value like she'd already done the math. Between conversations, she leaned in close enough for her voice to be heard but not seen. "You're gripping the wine glass like it owes you child support. I don't even drink. Then put it down before someone thinks you're casing the place." "I'm casing the place." For shrimp. Later, when the string quartet drifted into a slow waltz, Olivia turned to him with a look that wasn't quite a request. "You do dance, don't you?" "Depends. Are you going to fire me if I step on your foot?" "Possibly." She extended her hand. He took it. The ballroom faded as they moved. She led, though subtly, expertly, her movements smooth and unyielding. He followed, adjusting, learning her rhythm. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The air between them was charged with something unspoken, something neither of them had the language for yet. When the music ended, she stepped back first. "You're not terrible," she said. Again with the near compliments. She didn't reply. Instead, she nodded toward the terrace and walked away. He followed her into the cool night air, the city lights blooming below like fireflies. She leaned against the stone railing, her arms folded. "I don't usually bring people here," she said. "I figured. You keep figuring things. It's irritating. I can stop." "No, you won't." He exhaled. "Why did you really bring me tonight?" She turned her head just enough to meet his eyes. "Because I wanted to see what you'd do when no one expected anything from you. And you didn't disappoint." Silence stretched between them, not awkward but taut. Then she asked, "What would you do if you weren't worried about rent? Or school fees? Or broken appliances?" He blinked. "Honestly? Always. I'd build something. Not a company. Something simpler. Furniture, maybe. I like working with my hands. Making something that actually stays fixed when you fix it." She looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time all over again. "I've been thinking about something," she said after a pause. "There's a foundation I've been trying to restructure vocational development for single parents. Every consultant I've hired has treated it like a tax write-off. You've lived the problem. You might be able to solve it. Are you offering me a second job?" "I'm offering you a seat at the table." He ran a hand through his hair. "Why me?" "Because you don't know how to sell yourself. And that makes you dangerous in the best way." Before he could respond, the click of her heels echoed as she walked back inside, leaving him alone with a view that didn't belong to him and a feeling he couldn't shake. Back at the apartment later that night, Noah opened the door quietly. Olive was asleep on the couch with a blanket half tucked under her chin and her arms wrapped around a stuffed giraffe. He carried her to bed, brushing a curl from her cheek. He sat on the edge of her mattress after she turned over and whispered, "I think something big is happening." But he didn't say it to her. He said it to the silence. The next morning, Olivia sent an email with no subject and one line. "We start Monday." He stared at the screen for a long moment before typing back, "I'm in." But it wasn't just about a new project. It was the way she had looked at him, like he wasn't just a man trying to survive, but a man worthy of building something that would last. And he wasn't sure whether that scared him more than it thrilled him. The new project launched on a Monday that began with thunder. Rain slicked the city streets in silver ribbons as Noah arrived at the Fairchild offices early, already soaked through his collar. The receptionist handed him a towel without a word, a sign he'd officially become part of the chaos Olivia called business. The vocational initiative had moved from theory to reality faster than he anticipated. Olivia had secured a grant overnight through what he suspected was equal parts reputation and sheer will, and by the end of the first week, they were meeting with city officials, nonprofit directors, and construction companies willing to offer apprenticeships. But the more involved he became, the more he saw the cracks Olivia kept hidden from the world. She never missed a meeting, never raised her voice, never let anyone see her pause. But Noah started noticing the signs: the way her fingers trembled slightly after long calls, the way her shoulders didn't lower even in silence, the way she blinked just a little too long when she thought no one was watching. Late one evening, after the rest of the building had emptied, he found her in the boardroom, standing over a model of the new training facility they were planning to build. Her blazer was draped over a chair, leaving her in a silk blouse with the sleeves pushed past her elbows. Her heels had been kicked off beside the table. "I thought you left," she said without looking up. "I was going to," he said. "But I figured someone should check if you're still breathing." Her mouth curved, not in amusement, but in a kind of weary acknowledgement. "That obvious? You haven't looked away from that blueprint in 20 minutes. She finally looked at him. "You ever feel like you're building something that might collapse the second you step back?" He moved into the room, resting his hand on the edge of the table. "Yeah. Every time Olive gets a cold." Olivia's eyes flicked to his. "You're a better father than most men with 10 times your resources. I don't have the luxury of being anything else." Silence stretched between them until she stepped back and sat on the edge of the table, arms crossed. "I used to think love was a liability," she said. "An anchor. Something that made people weak. And now I'm not sure if I've been strong or just numb." Noah leaned against the opposite end of the table, facing her. "You don't have to be numb with me." Her eyes didn't waver. "That's the problem." The air between them twisted into something electric and fragile. And then, without pretense or hesitation, she leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't tentative. It wasn't polite. It was the kind of kiss born from exhaustion and restraint finally unraveling. His hand found her waist, grounding her, and for one breathless moment, everything else, the city, the company, the expectations, vanished. When they parted, Olivia didn't speak. She just stood, collected her blazer, and walked out, leaving him alone with the weight of something that had just changed. The next 48 hours were a blur of press releases, construction site visits, and a surprise board meeting where Olivia publicly announced a new Fairchild initiative designed to provide job training, childcare support, and micro-loans to single parents. Noah stood beside her at the podium, his name officially tied to the project as co-director. Reporters asked questions. Olivia answered them all with cool precision. What she didn't mention was that she'd taken a personal pay cut to fund the pilot program herself. Noah found out from the CFO 2 days later. He cornered her in the elevator on Friday evening, just as she was leaving. "You cut your own salary to fund this. It's a temporary adjustment," she said, not meeting his eyes. You didn't tell me. I didn't need to. I'm not your charity case, Olivia. She looked up sharply. I never said you were. Then why are you acting like you have to carry it all alone? Because I've never had anyone I could trust to carry it with me. He didn't reply. The elevator doors opened to the lobby, but neither of them moved. I kiss you, she said quietly. And I haven't stopped thinking about it. I haven't either. This isn't simple. No, he said, stepping closer. But it's real. She looked at him for a long time. Then she reached out and pressed the closed door button. They met in the middle like magnets, no hesitation this time, no questions. Just the kind of kiss that didn't ask for permission, that said everything neither of them could yet articulate. Later that weekend, Olivia showed up at Noah's apartment unannounced. She wore jeans and a sweatshirt, no makeup, and her hair in a low braid. Olive opened the door before Noah could reach it. You're the boss lady, she said, tilting her head. I am, Olivia replied. You brought pancakes? I did. Olive blinked. You can stay. They ate on the couch, plates balanced on their laps, cartoons playing in the background. Olivia let Olive braid her hair with glittery clips. Noah watched them from the kitchen, heart full and legs unsteady, like the ground beneath him had shifted. 3 months later, the first Fairchild Vocational Center opened with a ribbon-cutting ceremony. Noah spoke first, then Olivia. The crowd clapped, cameras flashed, and Olive, dressed in her favorite sparkly boots, ran up to hug them both. That night, on the rooftop of the new center, with the city lights stretching around them, Olivia turned to him. I used to think love came at the cost of everything I built. And now? He asked. No, she said, lacing her fingers through his. I know it's the reason I built it all in the first place. He kissed her as fireworks bloomed in the distance, not for them, but it didn't matter. Every part of his life had once felt borrowed. But in that moment, with her hand in his and his daughter laughing behind them, everything was finally his. And it wasn't a mistake that brought him here. It was the truth that followed after. The invitation arrived in the form of ivory cardstock, embossed with gold lettering, hand-delivered to Noah's office by Olivia's assistant. At the bottom, in her precise handwriting, was one line. Black tie. Bring Olive. He stared at it, then looked at the calendar. It was the anniversary gala for Fairchild Enterprises, a celebration that, according to whispers around the office, hadn't been held since Olivia's father passed. He found her an hour later, reviewing blueprints with a contractor in the lower wing of the vocational center. Her hair was loose for once, and she wore worn-in sneakers with her blazer like she hadn't even noticed she'd mismatched her outfit. You sure you want us there? He asked, holding up the invitation. This feels legacy. She signed a document without glancing up. You are part of that now. I'm not the tux and caviar type. You're the built-it-by-hand type. That's harder to find. He waited a beat. And Olive? She's the only person I trust to give an honest opinion on the dessert menu. She didn't explain further. The night of the gala, Olive wore a pale blue dress with tiny silver stars stitched across the hem, chosen after 15 minutes of spinning in front of the mirror. Noah adjusted the bow tie he still couldn't tie without a YouTube tutorial and helped clip a flower pin in her hair. When they arrived at the venue, a restored museum Olivia had converted into a multi-use event space, Noah's breath caught. The courtyard sparkled with strings of lights woven through the trees. A string quartet played softly from the garden steps, and guests mingled beneath giant archways of ivy and glass. Olivia stood at the center of it all in a silver gown that shimmered like frost under candlelight. She wasn't performing tonight. She wasn't commanding attention. She just existed in it, like she'd finally stopped carrying the weight of proving herself. Olive tugged on Noah's sleeve. You didn't tell me she was gonna look like a fairy. She's full of surprises, he murmured. Olivia caught his gaze and crossed the lawn toward them. Her heels barely made a sound on the stone. I miss you, she said quietly once she reached them. You saw me 6 hours ago. That's not what I meant. Olive ran off to the dessert table after Olivia whispered something about chocolate fountains. Noah turned to her, eyes searching her face. You look happy. I am. You used to look like you were bracing for something to fall apart. You don't anymore. She reached for his hand. Because I finally realized I don't have to hold it all alone. He squeezed her fingers. You never did. Later that evening, after speeches and toasts, Olivia took the stage. The room fell into reverent silence, not out of obligation but respect. My father once said legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you build while you're still here. For a long time, I believed that meant I had to do it all alone. Until someone walked into my life and reminded me that real strength isn't isolation, it's partnership. She glanced at Noah, and something in her voice softened. This year, we've built more than just a new division. We've built something that matters. And I couldn't have done any of it without the man who reminded me that leadership doesn't mean solitude. Applause filled the room, but Noah didn't hear it. He only saw her. After the gala, they returned to the rooftop of the vocational center, just the two of them. The city stretched out in lights, quiet and open. I used to think love would derail me, she said. And now? She turned to him. Now I know it anchored me. He pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. I want to build a life with you. Not the kind people read about in Forbes, but the kind that starts with pancakes and ends with bedtime stories. Her breath caught. Is that a proposal? Not yet, he said. But it's a promise. She kissed him then, slow and certain, like she'd already said yes. 6 months later, Noah stood in the quiet woods behind a small countryside chapel, straightening Olive's floral crown. She was the flower girl, and she took her job more seriously than any boardroom executive he'd ever met. You ready? He asked her. She nodded solemnly. She's gonna cry. You know that, right? I hope so. The ceremony was small, just family, close friends, and staff who had become something more. Olivia walked down the aisle in a simple gown, her eyes never leaving his. There were no cameras. No press. Just vows spoken with trembling hands and voices thick with everything they'd survived to get here. Afterward they danced barefoot on the grass behind the chapel, fairy lights strung between the trees, Olive twirling between them. Olivia laughed more that night than Noah had ever seen. It wasn't careful. It wasn't measured. It was free. Later, after the guests had gone and Olive was asleep in a hammock between two trees, Olivia curled up beside Noah beneath a knit blanket, her head on his chest. You remember the first thing I said to you? She asked. Yep. You accused me of being full of it. I still think you are, she murmured. But now I know you're full of heart, too. He kissed the top of her head. You changed my life. She looked up at him. No. We changed each other's. And they did. Together, they expanded the foundation to 6 cities. They built homes, careers, and futures for people who had once been told they had nothing to offer. Olive grew up surrounded by love and purpose, raised by 2 people who had found each other not in perfection, but in the cracks that made them real. And through it all, Olivia and Noah stayed side by side, no secrets, no walls, no pretending. Just 2 people who had once come from nothing and built everything that truly mattered. Together.